May 16th version of the Committee on Professional Conduct. I'd like to take a roll call, starting on my left.
Good morning, Xochitl Leon.
Mary Jiang.
Carola Nicholson.
Mary Jiang.
Dan Jacobson.
Deirdre Robinson.
Jose Campos.
Luz Molina Lopez.
We have a quorum, so I'm going to move onward with number one, approval of minutes of the March 21, 2019 committee meeting.
I move approval of the minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Roll call.
Roll call.
Sorry, before we do that, is there any comment from the committee? Any comment from the public? And now, all in favor, please say aye.
Just got to do a roll call.
Oh, no, there's going to be a roll call. Roll call, please.
All right, Jose Campos.
Yes.
Mary Jiang.
Yes.
Dan Jacobson.
Yes.
Xochitl Leon.
Abstain.
Luz Molina Lopez.
Yes.
Carola Nicholson.
Abstain.
And Deirdre Robinson.
Abstain.
The motion indeed passed. Move on to number two. This is a discussion of possible action regarding the possibility of allowing California candidates to take the uniform CPA examination prior to degree conferral. Ms. Pierce, if you want to make
Yes,
the presentation.
thank you. At the March 2019 meeting, CBA member Mary Jiang requested this topic be included on the agenda to discuss the possibility of allowing candidates to sit for the CPA exam prior to conferral of a bachelor's degree or higher. This would benefit candidates who often have to wait up to 6 weeks for the conferral of their degree to be posted to official transcripts. To provide some context for how the CBA's application process works internally, candidates who want to take the CPA exam create an online client account and complete an online application and send in a remittance form with their examination fee. The transcripts can accompany the remittance form or be sent directly from the school. Once the transcripts and application are received by the board, the processing can take up to 30 days. During the months of May and June is when the largest volume of individuals complete their bachelor's degree and are ready to begin taking the exam. If the school takes 6 weeks to post the conferral of the degree and then internal processing of the application can take another 4 weeks, this process limits the ability for graduates to sit for the CPA exam sections during the summer months before beginning employment and/or internships to obtain experience for the CPA license. Similar to the CBA, other states require the submission of an official transcript from those who have completed the educational requirement at the time of applying for the exam. However, a few states include exceptions for candidates that are nearing completion of their degree program. California has an exception for candidates in an educational program that results in the conferral of a bachelor degree upon completion of either a master's degree or the 150 semester units required for licensure. This process and exception is outlined on pages 2 and 3 of the agenda item. Staff research identified 3 states that allow candidates to take the CPA exam prior to degree conferral: Washington, Nebraska, and Missouri. In comparison to the CBA's examination eligibility requirements, all 3 states require a total of 150 semester units, but have core requirements similar to the CBA, with a slight fluctuation in the number of accounting subjects and business-related subjects. Each of these states have established guidelines that identify specific timeframes in which the candidate must submit educational documents that confirm degree conferral, which can occur after the candidate completes the first section tested of the CPA exam, including a provision to allow candidates to test prior to degree conferral would require the implementation of a tracking system to monitor any established timeframes to ensure the degree confirmation is submitted timely. Implementing a tracking system in advance of the CBA's business modernization project would require manual tracking and could negatively impact processing timeframes. Further, in order to implement this provision, the CBA would need to pursue legislation to make a statutory change to Business and Professions Code Section 5093. As an alternative, staff can explore working with the colleges and universities where a majority of CPA exam candidates submit transcripts from to possibly receive transcripts electronically for recent graduates who have completed their degree requirements but are awaiting degree conferral. The CBA may also consider accepting a letter from the school to certify a candidate has completed all degree requirements and the date the degree will be posted to the transcript. If the CBA would like to move forward pursuing a statutory change to allow CPA exam candidates to sit for the CPA exam prior to receiving conferral of a bachelor's degree, staff recommend this be developed during the Business Modernization Project, which will launch in July 2019. In the interim, if the CBA would like staff to pursue exploring the possibility of electronic submission of transcripts for recent graduates, staff will bring research back to the CBA for consideration at a future meeting. And those are my comments, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments from the committee? Mary?
Yeah, thank you for bringing this agenda to the CPA agenda. This question came about back in January when I was attending San Francisco State University. They had a financial literacy night. And so when I introduced myself and said I was a member of CPA, a San Francisco accounting professor approached me and asked me this question. And I said, I didn't know, but I'll be happy to bring it up to the CPA for research and get back to you. And he was delighted to hear that, because he said that some of his students, because of this delay in, you graduate in May, but it takes 6 to 8 weeks to get your degree conferral. Meanwhile, they can't sit for any exam. And he says it's better to have them sit for the exam early while things are still fresh in their mind. And I said, yeah, I think that's a great idea, and I'd be happy to bring it. And so I'm glad to see this on the agenda today for discussion.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I definitely think we need to move forward with this concept. The fact that 3 other states are already doing this, I think, is compelling. This is a big issue for our new professionals in public accounting. If they can't take advantage of that summertime before they start, it puts them behind. And to try to deal with all the exams while they're working full-time and dealing with all the other things that go with starting a new profession, that's real difficult. So I've had multiple professors approach me on this and frankly complain about the rigidity of that, because it's not just the month to 2 month period of the universities posting their information. We are then going to have a backlog of candidates that come in, and we're going to have a process of timing of how quickly can we get to the verification processes that we have to go through. So I think we definitely need to do something. I'm more of a proponent of legislatively changing some of the aspects, and that's going to take some time. And I'm supportive of, in the interim, dealing with the alternative mechanisms that might shrink that period, especially for the higher volume universities. The one question I have is, what's the risk, right? The issue is the timing of when a candidate can take his or her exam. And at the end of the day, they won't be licensed until they meet that requirement along with a bunch of others that we have to verify. And so I'm listening to the tracking piece, and I don't know how Washington, Missouri, and Nebraska set this out, but if in Washington's case, they had a 180-day window that they created, which I thought was good, that 6-month window. Does it mean that if the candidate takes an exam, say, in the middle of that, 3 months into that, and passes a part, but their degree then doesn't get formally conferred until outside of that 6-month window, does it negate the part that they passed? Or is it just, hey, you're taking this exam on the desire that expect you're gonna get your conferred degree. If you don't get your conferred degree, then you're not gonna get licensed. Maybe you've got good parts on the exam, but, so I just don't really appreciate the risk beyond that, right? That from a consumer protection, from a licensing standpoint, they're not gonna get past that stage until they get all their exams passed. And if they happen to have passed 2 exam parts prior to that degree getting into our hands, does that matter to us, right? And that's a question. That's probably the only thing I was thinking about as I read the materials for this.
Ms. Pierce, do you know the answer or have any comments on what Jose has asked and said?
Well, I think he's asking, what's the risk there? And from a staff perspective, I'm not sure we have any perspective on that. I would open it up to other board members for their thoughts or concerns.
Anyone else have any comments?
I would just add, I echo the sentiments of making it easier for students who have worked through their undergrad 4 or 5 years to be part of this profession and who are, making the investment for the study, for the test, to reduce as many barriers like this one so that they can apply, right? And in terms of risk, I'm sure we can find the controls in place to figure this out. I would also favor something that's more systemic instead of, doing a bunch of partnerships with the different schools.
Yes.
I agree with Mr. Campos. I don't think the risk is high at all. And actually, by the time they get their license, they probably would have cleared the degree and all the parts. So I don't believe that our business protecting the consumer is, there's any problem.
I had one comment, please.
Deidre.
And that is, I don't see the risk at all, and I echo the same sentiment as the other board members. But I would like to see more automated and statistical data provided so that we can understand who's coming in, the volume that would be coming, the volume of new applicants that would be applying for exam, and where they're coming from. Because maybe if we're talking in terms of partnerships with universities, because I think that's important, that we can better understand what their needs are and what we're getting directly from them.
Would it be best to then, as Ms. Pearson had mentioned, leave this for, or put it on during the process of business modernization process, so that there's an orderly, it's orderly in its processing and in its creation?
I think that's where we're gonna have to do it, but before I probably make a motion on this, you talked about a tracking system. Help me understand what you think we would need to track on this, because the volume, the statistics of who do we get from an exam standpoint is already in the licensing reports. It's that same population of new participants to take the exam. And right now, I think we're getting little backlogs at each graduation period, I'm guessing, as we wait for universities and all that. But what do we think we would need to track if we allowed individuals to start taking the exam prior to us having the degree in hand?
Just based on the framework that we looked at in the other states where they have that 180 days, or I think one of the states had a different time frame, 90 days or something. So it's my understanding, the way I read it is, they have that particular time frame after, they've passed the first exam section. So if we have to track that time frame for each applicant based on that first exam section taken, we're gonna have a lot of different timeframes to track. So right now, we have a very scaled back system in terms of monitoring or approving candidates. And so trying to add that in to track every single applicant may be more on the manual side as the automated side. So I'm thinking it's more that 180 days or whatever time frame the board would decide. If there was a time frame, that would be what we would be tracking.
Well,
Let me, if I may, will this tracking be materially expensive? I mean, I know you can't come up with
Yeah.
any exact figures right now, but is it something that is substantial, or?
Well, if we're talking about manual tracking, I would say there's probably not a cost. There's more of a operational impact because of the time frame that we would be going in and maybe doing manual review or looking at spreadsheets, those kind of things. Where the staff resources would be focused on that to make sure we're monitoring timeframes, and that might actually impact our licensing timeframes. In terms of a cost for an automated system, that I really can't comment on. I have no comment on that one, but as part of the business, it'd be part of the business modernization project, it would be, could be folded into that, and so, but, yeah.
Jose, or Mary, I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, based on when you mentioned on the normal processing, the applicants have to turn in, show proof of they got a degree from the university. Is that usually at the time of application? Or they say normally you just tick off, yes, they got the degree conferred, right? So if we have that same, they say 180 days or whatever, 6 months time frame, because usually they take the exam, part 1, part 2, in 2 months, 3 months increment. So if all applicant knows that they have to show their degree conferral, they just send that in and you just show as a simple check off. I think that's tracking may not be very onerous as far, because they know they have to show that in order to get the license. So somewhere along the line, that's gonna happen. It's a matter, do you need to check every one of them? No, I don't think so. I think as soon as they get it, they're gonna be happy to send it to you as fast as they can, because I'm sure they want to be, progressing along. So I think if your modernization plan includes that, I think the tracking shouldn't be too difficult.
Yeah, I think it's making sure, I think you're right. I think a majority of the students and the applicants are going to send that in as soon as they get that degree conferral. I think it's having that kind of backstop so that we can be proactively monitoring those who aren't submitting, or if there was a change in the fact that they may not have received a degree, so that we're reaching out and, addressing it on that side.
Going back to Mr. Campos's comment regarding the issuance of the license, under our current process, once someone passes the exam and they submit their application for licensure, at that time, staff would be back in that record and verifying the transcripts. And we could implement at that time, when staff does the review, to verify the conferral of the degree. And if it wasn't there, then we could send a communication to them. So if we didn't have the 60 or 180-day window that they had to do it, but had to do it prior to licensure, that would be very easy to implement, even under our current process with the change in legislation.
Okay. Well, with that, I think I've got two different motions. I mean, one motion would be in the interim, because any change is going to take a while. In the interim, I would move that staff proceed with working with, starting with the highest volume universities, and find mechanisms to obtain electronically submitted degree information that would help expedite the process.
Is there a second?
I will second it gladly.
Is there any further comment from the committee? And is there any public comment? Please call the roll.
Oh, sorry.
Deirdre Robinson,
Yes.
Corolla Nicholson,
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez,
Yes.
Soshi Leon,
Yes.
Dan Jacobson,
Yes.
Mary Jiang,
Yes,
and Jose Campos.
Yes.
All right, that passes. And Jose, I believe you had a second.
Yeah, the second, probably more longer-term motion then is to move that staff proceed with, one, a plan to obtain legislative change to allow candidates to sit for the exam prior to degree conferral at a time frame, I don't know, that is flexible. I mean, I would say a minimum of 90 days, probably no more than 180 days feels right, something in that range. And then secondly, to begin preparing for this potential change within your business modernization project that is about to launch.
Is there a second?
I will second.
Mary seconds that. Please call the roll.
Jose Campos?
Yes.
Mary Jion?
Yes.
Dan Jacobson?
Yes.
Soshi Leon?
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez?
Yes.
Corolla Nicholson?
Yes.
And Deirdre Robinson.
Yes.
All right, with that, that motion passes. And is there anything else that the committee wishes to discuss for future items? Is there any public comment? Oh,
There's another
oh.
item.
Well, we've got to discuss, number 3, discussion, and it's on mine too, so I just had, I turned 60 recently, so, who am I? Where am I? Discussion and possible action regarding continuing education reciprocity. Again, Ms. Pierce.
Thank you. At the March meeting, I provided preliminary information on the topic of continuing education reciprocity as stated in the National Association of State Boards of Accountancy, or NASBA, Uniform Accountancy Act Model Rules, which I will refer to as the UAA Model Rules. UAA Model Rule 6-7 establishes provisions for CE reciprocity, which allows CPAs to meet only the CE requirements of the state where their principal place of business is located. The specific text of the rule is included on Attachment 1 of the agenda item. As I presented in March, if the CBA were to move towards CE reciprocity, it would be relying on the CE requirements of other state boards of accountancy to ensure those licensed in multiple jurisdictions and who have a principal place of business outside of California are maintaining competency while practicing public accountancy. During the CBA deliberations, it was requested that staff conduct additional research to assist members in determining whether the CBA should pursue this option. In addition to providing an overview of the current CE requirements, which is provided as Attachment 3, staff focused its research on the possible volume of licensees that may take advantage of CE reciprocity, how other states view and have implemented CE reciprocity, and issues to consider should it wish to pursue steps to implement CE reciprocity in California. With regards to the volume of CPAs that may use this option, as stated on page 2, approximately 10% of California's CPA licensee population has an out-of-state address. While not all of these may take advantage of the CE reciprocity option, it provides a starting point to understand the number of licensees this may benefit. In reviewing other states' implementation of this provision, the 3 states that were contacted all somewhat follow the UAA model rules, the differences focusing on what the licensee is required to certify or provide evidence of at the time of renewal to qualify for CE reciprocity. One of the questions posed during the March discussion related to flexibility with differing renewal cycle options. For example, whether a state with a 2-year renewal cycle would allow CE reciprocity for a licensee whose principal place of business is in a state with a 3-year renewal cycle. The differing renewal cycles did not appear to have any impact on their CE reciprocity provisions. Additionally, one of the other questions raised during the March meeting was whether the CBA would still want to require completion of the regulatory review course, even if it moves towards CE reciprocity. During our research, we found that North Carolina has a provision regarding completion of an ethics course that deviates from the model rule. With this in mind, if the CBA would like to pursue CE reciprocity, it can use the UAA Model Rule 6-7 language as a base and then adjust the language to incorporate flexibility for differing renewal cycle timeframes, to require the completion of any California-specific courses such as the CBA's regulatory review course, or other requirements that the CBA deems appropriate. Staff would work with legal counsel to prepare language for CBA consideration and provide it at a future meeting. And that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions or comments?
So I'm generally supportive of CE reciprocity. However, we've got a long history on the board with respect to the attest license, and just, we've gone through task forces and processes, so we've got some very unique A&A requirements in California. Many of the other states don't have a dual license situation like ours, and so, in my own view, I just don't think we would be able to do something different with the A&A side of the house, right? We've got requirements around 24 hours. We've got GAO-type requirements if you're going to be attesting in that regard, and others, fraud matters. So I just don't see a path that would hold us true to the history we've been on with the attest license side of the house to change anything. But on the general experience side, it seems like we've got more flexibility where we might be able to explore doing this. At least those are my own thoughts on the matter.
Does anyone else have any comments? Mary?
Yeah, I agree with Jose, because the fact that we have a two-path, a E and a G, it helps to identify, because the people with the E has to have that additional attestation type of CE, whereas a G doesn't. So if you do reciprocity from other states that don't distinguish, how do we know who's from, say, North Carolina or New York or wherever? How could we tell if these people are doing attestation or not? How can you distinguish them? Even if you allow the more liberal E, G, it's sort of hard to tell, because right now, just look at some of the CPA. And I know some other states don't even ask people to take the 500 hours of, audit hours and let them be as, certified CPA. So I see that problem about the attestation, but then even if the more liberal sense of the G requirement, again, if we accept it at face value, I guess we can, but you could be accepting something that allows them to do something that they really haven't done.
So I'm probably not even in a mode of making a motion or having a specific path, but maybe this is something we can continue the dialogue on, but, I think with a premise of, don't think we would do a test. And if we do G, like, there was a series of questions you had on page 4 of the materials that you provided. And if I just went down some of those bullets that you had there at the top, I mean, would we want a waiver of all CE or include an exception to exclude the reg review course? I think that'd be an important course to retain regardless of license, so my own personal view is reg review would be something that should stay with any renewal that we do. And then there's, what if another state has no CE requirements, right? And if this individual happens to have that as their home state, and that's what we're looking to, then that wouldn't work for us. So I agree that that would not work for us. But is 0 the right answer, or what should, right now we require 80 hours, right? And so do we have a minimum in mind? I mean, obviously we had 80 hours in mind when we established our own set of regs, but if another state has 50, or is there some other minimum other than 0, I guess would be the question for staff to think about. And that would require understanding what every other state, sort of minimum renewal requirements would be. And then there's the last one on what if you have differing renewal cycles, right? That one I wasn't as concerned about. I mean, that one didn't bother me. If we got a 2-year versus a 3-year, and if we're comfortable with the totality of the CE that they have to do in that 3-year, then, and we consider that, then I'd probably be okay with that, but probably requires thinking about that as you gather some of the information for this.
Yes.
Yeah, my concern would be, what's our population? What are we looking at? How many other states are like us and how many other states are not like us? And try to figure out, what the population looks like and what we would like to join as a group versus not.
I would just
Yes.
feel that I think we need more information in regards to what are the CAs by the licenses that were mentioned earlier? What are the common denominators? What are unique? How does this compare to the other states without getting too nuanced here, because it could be a huge project? But I think from a concept perspective, it makes sense. When I saw that there might be states that don't require any CEs, will we accept that? I didn't like that. But I don't know the bulk of that. Are we talking about one state in the United States and that's, 1% out of the 10%? Who knows? But if we can just get go peel the onion further so that we can be more informed before we have a strong opinion either way.
Well, then, and one thing I wanted to say is that, to me, it just seems too messy. There's, that we've got, listen, we're the largest population in the nation. We've got 40 million people here approximately, and we should be able to have our own rules. Having said that, I think that I'm getting a sense of the committee that it wants staff to continue to investigate this issue. Does anyone disagree with the last statement that I made?
No, I think that's exactly the discussion. And to your point on messiness, that should be part of the considerations. I mean, you're embarking on this business modernization process, and is this doable in that concept? We got a bunch of forms that we send out to people. You're gonna be setting up online forms for folks, and is there mechanisms, is what we discussed gonna make sense, A versus G? Making this, 1.2 is the UAA language is specific to non-residents, right? And I assume we wouldn't have a resident of California who's trying to get CE reciprocity on some other home state license, right? But I like the UAA restriction on it, as to non-residents. But yeah, I think we gotta look at the totality of that, and if it's too messy or cumbersome or costly, then it might not be worth doing this.
Does staff understand the direction? All right, then we'll go along with that. And assuming that I haven't missed any other items, does anyone on the committee have any future items that they would like to bring up for future discussion? Is there any public comment? All right, then this meeting is adjourned.